Mr. Kevin O'Brien, Honorable LegCo members, SH and EQ, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's CIC See What I See luncheon, 香港建造新視野. I'm delighted to meet all of you, my brothers and sisters of construction industry, once again. Although the old saying goes, there is nothing new under the sun, 太陽之下無新事. I'm very sure that we must do something new under the sun. Does anyone here have any ideas what the figure 35.9 is all about? 35.9. I do hope that this is the average age of our skilled workers. Unfortunately, it's not. That's the temperature recorded by the observatory on last Tuesday, marking the hottest day in September since 1884. And the previous high of 35.3 degrees Celsius was just set a week before. It is an alarming warning from our Mother Nature. Today, our honorable keynote speaker, Mr. Kevin O'Brien, will give his sharing a very accurate topic, which we all must agree with. Too hot to bear, time to act. 熱不可耐，坐言起行. Yes, it's way too hot to bear, especially for our diligent workers who toil from dawn to dusk in outdoor areas. On the hottest date in July, I paid several visits to different construction sites on behalf of CIC. A bottle of sports drink and a piece of iced pineapple may offer them some sort of relief from the heat, but that's only a temporary measure. While the heat wave is only one side of the dice, not to mention typhoons and cold snap. We are extremely vulnerable in face of such extreme weather. Therefore, our industry ought to do something path-breaking to turn things around, because the extreme weather not only puts our workers' safety and health at risk, but also put our future generation at stake. Please bear in mind, construction and buildings account for 39% of the global carbon emissions, 36% of energy consumption, 40% of drinking water pollution, and new construction consumes 40% of raw materials globally. Annual construction waste is expected to reach 2.2 billion tons globally by 2025. Never shall we turn a blind eye from our pain points, and never shall we shrink from our responsibilities. For the construction industry, I envisage a 30% carbon reduction by 2030. The base year is this year. It might seem a long way to go, but my fellow 建築人, roll your sleeves up, it is time to act. 我哋真係要坐言起行. Every small step we take will eventually accumulate into a giant leap. Let's take a look at this video that visualizes how Hong Kong construction industry can work together in progressing towards a sustainable future. Watch the video. That's all your work. In the last What I See gathering, I laid out a zero waste plan. I recommend all of you, the leaders of the industry here. First, adopt design for sustainability, safety, and productivity from the very beginning stage of each and every construction project. Secondly, adopt AMI Infinity approach throughout the asset life cycle, AMI 無限. Last but not least, adopt CDE to monitor the project and data analytically in order to generate a circular economy, 循環經濟, and to ensure your project will achieve the 3-0 strategy, 3-0部隊, namely zero waste to landfill, zero waste to energy, and zero waste of resources. To support the industry to achieve sustainable construction, different measures are undertaken by CIC. Our chairman of environment, Ivan Fu, is here. Where is Ivan? Huh? Okay, so it's all your work. So the CIC Carbon Assessment Tool, 建造業議會評估工具, helps the industry to evaluate the carbon performance of buildings and infrastructure in Hong Kong, from raw materials extraction to the end of construction. So far, more than 300 projects have made use of this common platform, and we want more. The CIC Green Product Certification, 綠色產品認證, is targeted at helping our stakeholders understand different construction materials and products. Currently, there are over 700 certified products on the platform. Again, we need more. Moreover, a smart waste management tool developed by CIC is expected to launch in 2023 to enhance on-site waste management and data monitoring. Financially, the Sustainable Finance Certification Scheme, 可持續金融認證計劃, is developed by CIC to bridge the gap between the financial and construction industry to drive solid sustainability results. Last but not least, how could we not mention our landmark facilities, CIC Zero Carbon Park? It showcases the state-of-the-art eco-building design and technologies to the public and industry stakeholders, and innovators to embrace and deploy new technologies as a way to reduce carbon footprints. I'm proud that CIC ZCP is giving a lead in demonstrating low-carbon construction or for a greener future. During my previous site visit, I was thrilled to see the concept of zero waste is widely rooted. From installing solar panels at temporary site offices, grey water recycling, to rebound prefabrication, these are great examples of smart utilization of resources. Today, we're extremely excited to have Kevin, the chairman of Business Environment Council, with us, who will share with us his experience and insight in fostering green construction and explore how a combination of smart design, innovative engineering, and new technology and tools can and will help deliver sustainable construction projects. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Kevin O'Brien.
Okay, good afternoon, Honourable LegCo members, Thomas Ho, Chairman of the Construction Industry Council, CIC Council members, fellow BEC Board Directors, industry friends, customers, contractors, supply chain partners. Welcome. A little bit of food for thought as you're just about to indulge in lunch before we start, and a little bit about how well we're informed of our actions. So, if you're going to eat chicken for lunch, to have 1 calorie of chicken needs 2 calories for the chicken to eat. If you're going to eat pork, the pig needs to eat 3 calories to feed you 1 calorie. And if you're going to eat beef, the cow needs to eat 6 calories to feed you 1 calorie. So just about understanding your actions can make a huge difference already on what you're about to do. Some of you have said, as you've walked in the door, and I've met many old friends, we look forward to listening to you this afternoon. Well, I'm afraid listening's not going to do. You're all going to have to do something when you go back to the office. And you'll have to do something tomorrow, and you'll have to do something the day after, and next week and next year, until we get this problem cracked. It's not just about talking or listening. This is about the action that we now need to see across society, across industry, and basically, it's a matter of survival that we're talking about. When I was talking to younger members of my team, I was looking at the title to come up with today. And apologies for the poor pronunciation, but Yipa Honoi, Joding Hehang. This is our climate. This is our city. This is our industry. This is our duty. This is not somebody else's problem. This is a problem, and this is an opportunity that we need to deal with. The people in this room are responsible for making this happen. If we don't do it, don't be expecting somebody else to do it for you. This is down to us. And if we look at the global challenges and opportunities in construction, they're plentiful. And the opportunity, as we already know, here in Hong Kong, the $300 billion per annum is plentiful. But here are some of our challenges: labour, productivity, safety, engaging with the community, interest, inflation. Decarbonisation is obviously the focus today, and digital and modern methods of construction are some of the opportunities going forward. But in terms of what we've seen, and we look here in Hong Kong, we've had a very hot summer. In fact, in September, we've had hottest on record, as already mentioned by Thomas. Hot cannot tolerate. We just cannot handle it continuing to increase. And this is not just a problem for Hong Kong. This is a global issue. This summer, we've seen flooding, we've seen fires, we've seen problems all over the world. In fact, in some places in the Northern Hemisphere, you've seen the challenge because people are not used to the high temperatures, and you've had temperatures exceeding 40 degrees with no air-conditioned environments. And the solution that they think about is by adding air conditioning. Actually, air conditioning is just going to exacerbate the problem. And so what are we going to do to handle these issues and to stop these issues happening? Now, when I've been listening to my Cantonese teachers, I've also understood in this last term here, taking a long time, having a long wait, but the character can also mean patience. And in terms of patience, are we going to continue to be patient and wait for something to happen, or are we going to start to deal with it ourselves? We cannot take so long to deal with the issues. And I think taking so long is summed up in the image that I'll show you now. Yes, we have our 2050 net zero goals. Yes, some of us are doing our ESG reports and our sustainability reports. Yes, there's sustainability jargon. And yes, there are events. But we need to open the tap. And that's the job of everybody in the room today. And that's your job. Don't look across the table and think that it's somebody else's job. This is your job. Every one of you in the room has responsibility. Most of you are senior industry players. And so the decisions you make in your organizations can have a direct impact on our ability to make a change. Talking is good. Listening is good. But talking and listening with no action is not the solution. And this is where I hope your assignment, when you go back to your offices, is to start to open the tap. And the construction industry must take action. But let's not talk about the construction industry in the third person. We are the construction industry. The people in this room are Hong Kong's construction industry. We're the customers, we're the contractors, we're the supply chain partners, we're the regulators of the construction industry. And we have to do something about it in terms of the challenge that we've got. This is our issue to deal with. And again, a little bit like my what you're going to have for lunch example, I think a lot of us get confused with the jargon of what is scope 1, what is scope 2, what is scope 3. So a little bit of a simple introduction. Scope 1 emissions is the diesel. If you've got plant on your site, which no doubt every single one of you have, then you're burning diesel. It's a problem. Every time I win more foundations projects, my challenge is I'm digging holes, I'm disturbing the ground, I'm using diesel plant to dig the hole, and I'm filling that hole with concrete and steel. Huge, huge issues. The biggest ticket issues that we have in the construction industry. Scope 2 is the energy that we use, the energy that we purchase. And we're reliant in this city with Hong Kong Electric and China Light and Power. And we're working together with those utility companies to clean up the production of power in our city. And then we have scope 3 emissions, the emissions that we tend to forget about, but these are emissions that we can control as well if we specify the right materials, if we buy the right materials. And the material situation continues to evolve. We're now seeing better materials coming with a better carbon credential, and that's the type of thing that we need to be using in our industry. And so there's a huge number of things. If you look at that slide there and just think about what you can do to improve your business this afternoon, tomorrow, next week, then you can already start to think about your assignment. And if we look at the whole life carbon approach, if we look here at how carbon comes in to our projects, whether it be the embodied carbon here, or the operational carbon, or the embodied carbon on the other side, the end-of-life carbon, the use stage embodied carbon, it's a huge problem. And obviously, we're trying to squeeze down on carbon. The challenge we've got, and we mustn't get confused here, is the carbon action plan is not going to solve the challenge of construction. Because the Carbon Action Plan 2050 really focuses in on the operational energy use. It doesn't touch hardly at all on embodied carbon. And our problem in the construction industry is the embodied carbon and how, when we're building, we create operationally efficient assets for our customers to use. So what do we leave behind? And yes, we've got modern design, and yes, we end up with modern assets. But sometimes I think in the industry, we're stuck with 19th century processes. And this is a photo from a factory somewhere in Asia this year. This is not a photo from last century or the century before. This is this year. And my comment on that is we're not standing up in terms of how efficient we are in our supply chain by improving how we bring the asset together to bring it to life. And so a challenge for you all, is this really the best we can do? Is this really, really the best we can do? What we need to be moving towards is adopting modern processes in our factories in the same way that many other industries have already moved. If we compare the way that we manufacture the products that end up in our sites versus, say, the motor industry and how they've moved on in terms of their manufacturing. And so let's focus a little bit on design and just understand the challenges of design. So design means specification as well. And why is cement an issue? You would have heard a lot about cement being an issue. Well, just look at this process here. Ballpark, about a ton of carbon to produce a ton of cement. And that carbon is whether you're using the big heavy plant to extract the materials from the ground, or where you're bringing the temperature up to process it, or the chemical process that brings the different products that go into the production of cement and the byproducts that they emit. This is the challenge that we've got. So every time you buy a ton of cement, you can think about the ton of carbon that's going out from that. And then we move to steel, and steel is even worse, because for a ton of steel, we're about 1.8 tons of carbon. And again, it's the process. It's the raw material extraction. It's when you're bringing coke together with iron ore and the byproduct of the CO2 coming off of that process. And so for every time we're putting steel in the ground or in our structures, in our roofs, in whatever we're using on our construction sites, we're putting 1.8 tons of carbon out there. But there's fixes to this. There are low carbon design specifications, whether it be concrete, whether it be steel, whether it be timber. And what we're starting to see is some informed developers starting to move along these lines. But we know that if we're a niche purchaser, we pay a niche price. And what we need to do is we need to move the economics, the economies of scale. If the industry shifts towards the greener products, then the price balance will move. In the same way that we've already seen the shifting pricing of electric vehicles, the same will happen here. We already know how popular electric vehicles are now in our town in terms of new registrations. And the prices are coming down because the economies of scale are kicking in. The same will happen as more developers, more customers, more specifying engineers, more contractors make the right decisions about the materials we're going to use. So we have the power to drive up market demand. We can also challenge about regulations, how much regulatory framework impacts our ability to do the right thing. And there's a lot to be done here. This particular example is the use of timber. In Singapore, it's being used. In the Philippines, it's used engineered timber. Obviously, there's challenges in terms of the regulatory framework here in the ability to use timber in our permanent structures. And this is going to be slightly more difficult to crack. But let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about conservative design approach and look at the statistics there. A study of 23 buildings showed that steel beams are only using an average of 50% of their actual loading capacity because we're over-designing or we're over-conservative. And so we've already got a problem with embodied carbon. And if we're very conservative with our design, then we're adding to the problem we've already got, let alone trying to resolve it. So these are things that we can make a difference of by applying smart engineering to the way in which we design the projects that we need to build. And then, of course, we also like to change our minds. We like to have design changes. We also have a challenge with sometimes the challenge, as Thomas alluded to earlier, with the aging workforce, meaning that the skill level potentially is challenged. And so it's not just changing design, but it's errors that happen in construction projects. And I'm afraid to say, when errors occur, most of what needs to be taken down ends up in the landfill. And that, again, is our challenge. And we do have some tools that help us understand the challenges. We've got the CIC carbon assessment tool, and there's a lot of other technology now as we're moving on the journey and seeing BIM taken up by the whole industry. There are automated products that bolt in to your BIM model and will actually automate the assessment of carbon in your projects, and will also aid the process of going through the design reviews to look at how can I improve the carbon performance of my asset. The next one I want to focus on is processes. And we can no longer afford to be stuck in the 18th, 19th, 20th century. We're 22 years into the 21st century, and we need to start running our manufacturing operations like we're in that era. And so we need to jump on. Thomas has used the term MI Infinity, whether it be MI Infinity, the MIC public housing. Let's be smart in the way that we engage with some of the best factories in the world, in China and across Asia and start to take advantage of all of that manufacturing expertise. But we need to think, can we achieve this manufacturing expertise with a construction mindset? And that's another challenge for the room. What resources you use to bring this to fruition. And then we're also starting to move on the adoption of digital. So using digital technology to look at logistics, how you bring your materials into site, how you store materials on site, how you bring it together. Again, it's engaging with our younger people and making the construction industry a more exciting place for them to work. For a generation that have grown up without knowing life without a smartphone. And then they turn up in an office when they're given a pen and a piece of paper and expect to get on with their jobs. And so some huge challenges for us. But we are seeing movement. We've got informed developers moving along on the journey. This is a project that we're involved, the first private sector MIC project. I've been to look at the offsite module, I've been to look at the site, and I hope that we see more of this going on. There's certainly other developers in the room that are moving on this journey as well. We've also got the public housing journey moving on in this space. But it's not just housing. It's student accommodation, it's hotel accommodation, it's many, many other things. This doesn't matter which developer it is. This doesn't matter which customer it is. This doesn't matter which contractor is building. This is about using the technology that's available in the industry and using it to help us to smartly deliver our projects. And by smartly delivering our projects today, we're talking in the context of reducing the carbon that we use on our projects. And we certainly need to be using the technology. Almost everyone in the room here will no doubt be using Autodesk in their office for some form of their design process. Well, they're now moving and pushing out into the lean manufacturing era. In fact, Autodesk is the same software that is used to design a Tesla car. And you can rest assured that a Tesla car manufacturing facility looks very, very different to a construction site. Here's a challenge for the room. Almost everyone has construction sites. How many construction sites have currently got an EV charging facility for people that are driving an electric vehicle to charge on their sites? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but my guess is not very many. I'm guilty. I don't drive an electric vehicle. But the outgoing Secretary of Environment, when he saw me getting into my car before, made the question to me, Kevin, when are you changing your car? And so immediately I had to go back to the office and speak to our department and place an order for an electric vehicle. It's the right thing to do. And as long as we learn the lessons and we listen and we go and do something about it, if I'd listened and not done something about it, that's my problem. And that's why I say to you here today, this is not just about listening, this is about you going back and doing something. So whether it be as simple as you making the instruction in your next project specification that you're going to put EV chargers in for a certain number of your car parking bays, you're already heading in the right direction. But we also need to look at how we decarbonize the plant and equipment on our construction sites. Gammon will shortly take delivery of the first electric crane, a 150-ton crane. But the challenge with electric cranes is, of course, they need to be plugged in, the power requirement, they need an umbilical cord. And so there's an evolution going on. Is it electric? Is it hydrogen? Who knows? But certainly there are challenges there. And of course, getting ourselves off diesel. The dirty black smoke coming off the construction site is something that we need to deal with. We need to get away from this. This is the biggest problem. And I'll show you something later why it's a problem going forward, because you will no longer be able to hide away from it. I say here that the business I work for uses 100% B5 biodiesel. The problem a lot of people don't understand with B5 is that only 5%, the 5 means 5% of it is biodiesel, the rest of it's just regular fuel. And so there's the big challenge for us. Last week I was on a project in Singapore that's a refinery, Neste, the former state-owned oil enterprise from Finland. And we're working on that project. And interestingly, almost all of their biofuel gets exported to somewhere else in the world. And so why aren't we using it? Why aren't we using it in Asia? Let's bring the plant and equipment, let's get the regulatory framework in such a position that we can use the products that we're producing right here in Hong Kong, right here in Asia. And the hydrogen bus that's still parked up, wrapped up, we cannot be doing this. We cannot have these smart initiatives happening without the ability to be put into use. And we only have to go into Shenzhen and see a huge electric bus fleet and hydrogen innovation taking place across China. And so for me, that's the real one in terms of how we crack the nut in dealing with our plant and equipment on our sites. But there's technology as well. Sensors, digital technology, hard technology, software technology, bringing these together to actually reduce the amount of wastage that we see happening on our sites. And this technology is proven, it's BD approved, there's no excuse not to use this type of technology. And then how do we treat waste, construction waste? You all know the cost. How much recycling happens from your sites? My guess is that you probably don't monitor it. It's left at site operations. The only time it gets monitored, I guess, is when it comes to you producing your sustainability report. But what management actions have you put into place to reduce it? How aware are you? How are you letting your team know that you care what you send to landfill? And so, how are you specifying how materials arrive on your site? Is everything wrapped individually in plastic? Is it coming on wooden pallets? Are the pallets recycled? Again, it's a question you need to go back and ask your procurement department, or how you specify. And then also looking at new technology. I know there's some people in the room, we were chatting earlier, but the government is moving, the government is shifting, and we're coming up with smart technology to help us, and smart process technology to help us deal with some of our waste. So whether it be biochar facilities with carbon lock-in with waste, already under construction at the Eco Park, or can we dream of a future of a zero-emission construction site, and looking at all of the different opportunities listed out there of what we can do. And that's just in the construction phase, let alone what we leave behind. And when I talk about what we leave behind, this is about when we build. Normally, we've got fancy facilities like this hotel that are air-conditioned, that have lighting, that use lots of power. Thomas put the statistics up earlier. How do we ensure that the assets we leave behind for our customers are enabled to be operationally efficient? And so now there's smart technology that doesn't need any new hardware, that just does smart things with the data. And it enables people to save money. Not only does it enable people to save money, but it enables people to stop burning carbon. Because a 15% reduction in your energy bill actually means less carbon burnt at the power station or another facility. And so there are smart things that we can do. There are also some smart things to do in terms of recycling projects, reprovisioning projects, whether it be Daegun, Central Market, Tai Ho Heritage Hotel. Whenever we're reusing an asset, we're reducing the end-of-life carbon. And not only that, but we're providing something for society to enjoy about the cultural heritage of the city that we love. And so another question for you, the next time you're approving something when you go back to your office, I want you to ask the question, are you paying a green premium? Are you willing to pay a green premium? Or might it even be the green opportunity? And I'll give the example of my own finance director, who drives a car, she loves cars, and she's just changed to an electric vehicle. And she's over the moon about it because where we stay in our building, the developer pays the energy bills, including the car charging. And so she's now got a zero fuel bill. And of course, she's the CFO. She's very, very, very happy about it. But her car wasn't at the end of life. So this green premium for her was actually a green opportunity. She did the right thing. She felt very happy about what she was doing, and she saved some cash as well. So not everything needs to be thought of in terms of having a premium attached to it. And of course, we see the green mortgages and bonds and everything else we're speaking about. But the more interesting one is that the pressure that will come, whether it be if you're a listed company listed on the Hong Kong Exchange with the TCFD requirements or the Hong Kong Exchange requirements, But the one to be aware of is the IFRS down here, which are the reporting standards that most companies need to report in line to, and the forthcoming ISSB. So we'll all be required to report in the same way, and we'll all be called out in terms of our performance. And of course, this is not just about Hong Kong. We need to bear in mind what China's targets are. And China will peak in 2030. I think Hong Kong peaked in 2014 with regard to carbon emissions. And by 2060, their journey is carbon neutral. I think everybody expects and everybody hopes and should plan for achieving carbon neutrality sooner than the dates that have been set out. And when we look at opportunity, for me, this is the feast that's on the table. And this is about MTR extensions. This is about land created for housing. This is about the Northern Metropolis. This is about the Hong Kong Shenzhen Loop. There's so much opportunity here for everybody in the room. And quite simply, you cannot go into this opportunity without changing your behavior, because the people that we're creating all of this future for are the people that need us to act. It's our next generation that need us to act. And so the heat demands our immediate attention. You're not going to get away with it. It's there for everybody to understand, and you need to do something about it. And many of you would have been through facilities in Hong Kong this year and last year and the year before where we've left the doors open because of COVID and we've got air conditioning blowing out in the street. Well, France this year said, if you leave your doors open, you're going to get fined. And ties, dress down Japan or dress down Spain. You don't need to wear a tie necessarily, because if you wear a tie, you get hotter. And so we need to see whether we actually change our business behaviors in terms of how we go about everything. And this is a really interesting organization. Climate Trace used to call out global organizations because it could actually use satellite information to tell power companies or tell mining companies about how their real performance was versus what they had said in their sustainability report. Well, now those same companies are engaging Climate Trace to actually help them to make sure they're telling the truth, rather than calling them out. And so we all need to take action before we're called out and we start having the satellites and people zooming in on us in terms of how we're performing in our industry, in our sector. And so back to my comment earlier, when you said you were here to listen, well, I'm afraid listening's not good enough. There's enough talk, and it's time for us all to go back and do something today. And if we don't, then I'm afraid the young people will be calling us out, because our next generation cares so much about this, because it's their future. And so what have you done? And when you talk with your children and your grandchildren, and they ask you, what have you done about improving sustainability in the environment for their benefit, make sure that your conscience is clear and that you're able to engage in that discussion in a positive way with them. Thank you all very much for listening. Thank you.